shoes off on? Almost 30?
Yeah.
It's huge. It's huge. Oh. We'll talk about that later.
Maybe 100.
No, not very deep.
So that's another nice one that we'd caught. That day we actually had, all the ones we had that day were over 3 pounds. And of course, triggerfish. I think we already kind of touched on this. Mingos and triggerfish is table fare. Both are sweeter and tastier than red snapper.
I think it makes sense though when you look at what they're eating. So bad stuff bioaccumulates up. It's had the opportunity to accumulate some of that stuff. So you look at like a 15-year-old red snapper that's been eating who knows what, floating around in the Gulf for a while. It kind of makes sense that those Mingos have a cleaner meat. And you can tell by looking at it.
And where to find Mingos and triggerfish, unlike snappers that are somewhat more wreck-oriented, we catch most of the Mingos and triggerfish on natural bottom, hard bottom rocks and ledges. And you have to learn how to fish and not be fishing a structure to be productive with these. And they consistently get bigger when you get offshore. Are a million triggerfish, and they're all that big.
And if you drop a sabiki rig, you'll catch 6 of them at a time.
Yeah. So the inshore waters are really kind of the nursery. You need to be pushing that state water boundary or further to start getting. The further you go, the better the grade will become.
Not all of us have the luxury. Like I have to stay in more shallow water. So for me, I'd probably drop this 125 down to 50, 60, and make do with what I can.
But there's plenty of places inside of state waters that are in that 110 to 125 range.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Mingos and triggers caught in state waters. You just have to catch more of them and throw quite a few back.
Maybe try catching them a little differently too. I think the bigger ones are a little bit smarter than the small ones.
As far as seasons, Mingo snappers year round. This year, triggerfish early, but the last year is close about. Two years. So somewhere, if you're going to catch the winning triggerfish in the rodeo, you need to have that done by the 15th.
Just in case.
Yep.
I have so much to say about this.
All right.
Go ahead.
Come on. You got it. You got them calm. Sir.
So I went to college and my degree's in mechanical engineering. I'm a nerd on my boat. The way my boat's set up with my watch, my phone, and my laptop at home, the information running through my boat, and and you and I talked about one of my weird thoughts earlier today for about an hour. There's a lot going on. And having I call it my smart boat, is just having my boat set up a certain way, I think directly leads to catching more fish. If I know what I'm looking at, how to interpret it, and how to read it, it changes everything. And some of you guys were here for the Garmin seminar, and you saw a lot of that firsthand. Like, if you know what you're looking at, it's gonna make make it a lot easier. And I can tell by looking at this picture, and as we go through some of these slides, I'll probably point out some of the things I'm talking about, but there's absolutely some things that could be done differently. But I'm sure we'll get into those.
Yeah, and I actually took some, this only has stuff that's kind of pertinent.
But it's still, I mean, it's still, I mean, in looking at it and knowing what you're looking for, and I agree with you, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff you could point out about catching fish in here too,
yeah.
But there's still, if I was on if this was your boat and I got on, I would immediately start clicking around in there and make it a little bit.
And what you should notice from this is we're fishing really hard bottom here. There's good coral and live bottom marking on the bottom. Of course, we have our Mingos here, and most of these stripes up here at the top, those are actually the lines going down. You can actually read the lines.
I can go ahead and tell you that what this picture I thought was my boat, but this is not on my boat. And somehow, if this engine's running, you've got some corrosion.
Again, anyone doesn't know favorite terms is the little fuzzies on the bottom.
You have the good fuzzy one coming up?
I think maybe.
And these
actually,
are
I may not have.
These are the terms Tim actually uses on the boat too. And I promise at least one of you guys at some point over the next year will go, ooh, look at the fuzzies. And then you're going to get mad at yourself.
But what this on top of the red is designating our hard bottom, but this little fuzz that's on the bottom, the yellow and green color, what that's telling me is that's living bottom. Corals and rocks and stuff, that's actually live, what we call live bottom. If the bottom was just solid red with no little things on top of it, it's not nearly as good of a spot because it's not living bottom, living corals.
And there's definitely, and I run Garmin's on my boat, there's some settings to change that'll help really identify what you're looking at on the bottom. And another example, for instance, is if I'm running across the bay, I can tell if it's sand or mud based on how deep the red is. And I hope that slides in here somewhere.
Yeah, I think I know the one you want. I'll just flip over and get that one.
And I think, I mean, even then that one that with the split screen, with the split zoom that you have in it, is important enough for, yeah, there it is.
So, learning to use your electronics. You know, if you're not using your split zoom function, you need to. So what we're looking at here is a piece of bottom that's in 210 feet of water. And I want y'all to ignore this side of the screen as best you can. Most people would drive up on this piece of bottom and they would just keep on going to the next spot. And I can pull right in there behind you and catch fish. Now this particular one happens not to be a Mingo spot, but it's a good representation. All this here, on this side, we're only looking at the bottom 30 feet. And it's a whole lot different. You got from the like it's going to be in the next picture I'll show you, but it can be the same thing can happen with Mingos. They're up underneath the little edges and the rocks and the corals, and they're up underneath all that stuff. And there's enough here with the fuzzies that I see here, plus these few fish, that we're going to stop and fish. Well, the same exact spot 10 minutes later.